So here we have what fish? Steelhead, which is a member of what family? Salmon, trout family. They're all cousins. They lay their eggs in fresh water, go out to the ocean, and then come back and reproduce. So this we got in, it's called just eviscerated, just gutted. But the first thing we're always going to want to do is just go in and clean it out of anything excess. Always have your scissors handy. Usually most of the belly contents and everything have been removed, but there are little bits of sometimes just coagulated up blood that you want to grab your towel in there and smear out as much as you can. It makes your whole cutting board and the whole butchery process just that much cleaner. Now, is anything in the trout family, does it make a good fish stock?
No.
Not great. Any of the heavier fatty fish do not make good stocks. That fat goes rancid pretty quick, has a much more pungent flavor, and it's not something that you want to make a stock out of. So, same as you would with a smaller round fish, we're just going to go through and we're going to trim our fins. Now usually this is a step for when you are preparing it for a stock, because you don't want the fins and everything in a stock, but it's just good practice to go through because the fins also have bacteria on them, and if you get poked by it, tends to get infected, and sometimes you can get an actual poisoning where you have to go to the hospital. So if you ever get poked by these, keep an eye out on your arms or wherever you get poked. Usually it's your hands. But if you get poked and you start seeing a line coming up, go to the ER. Don't be like, oh, I'll be fine. You want to go to the ER, because that can go to your heart and cause bigger issues. So, nice sharp pair of shears. Make sure you get all the fins off. We got them all there. Then we go for the gills. This fish we can tell has been frozen because of the color of the gills and the clarity of the eye. The gills are a little bit off color, and that's because it froze. The eye is still really nice and clear. So there's two signs for freshness, right? The gills being nice bright red, not purple or dark, and also the eye being clear. Goes in the scrap pile. Alright, now I have a couple different choices for knives. We have the classic Japanese Debo style. That's really good for all types of fish fillet. We have our regular bendable fillet knife, another good all-around fish fillet knife, and then we have what I like to use for especially fish a little bit longer, is just really nice flexible slicing knife. My years working in the seafood restaurant, this was my big fish knife, majority of the time. If it had big heavy bones, I would switch over and cut through the bones with the heavier knife. So of course, it's always starting off a couple little passes on your steel. Now when we cut a round fish, where do we start? Right, up near the head. We're going to trim around the collar area. Usually you can go in right behind that fin, trim that out, and then just trace around the head. And we can take our thumb and feel where the soft part is. We're just just going to go right up to the edge of that soft part. So we want to get as much meat out as possible. We want to make sure that's nice and free. Then we trace the backbone. Not pushing hard, just getting the knife to cut through. And following that backbone. We're gonna go through, just give a little, just using the tip of our knife. You're gonna feel that backbone in there, and you're just gonna trace it. Going a little high or low on that one. I've gone all the way through. I'm going to take my knife, push it through, and just following that backbone. Pushing away from me. Take off the whole fillet. So you can see there's a little bit of meat left, right? That's okay. We're gonna go through with our spoon. We're just gonna scrape that up. That becomes usable, that we can freeze. We can turn it into, you know, fish cakes or another use. So that won't go to waste. Then we flip it over. Same thing on the other side, right around the collar. Now everybody has a strong side and a weak side. If you're a lefty, it's going to be the side I just did. If you're a righty, it's going to be the side I'm doing right now, because the fish is working against you. You're going to go ahead, you're going to trace the other side, and I like to put the head off the edge of my cutting board. That lets my whole fish rest flat from the spine back. If I put it up here, I get this weird little hump, and I'm going to end up cutting off a little bit more fish or meat than I want to. Same idea, coming in here, tracing down along that backbone. Around that top fin. Will you go pull that skin, please? Turn the fish around. Now that I got that started, see how I got it right down along the backbone right there? You can see how that knife, it looked long to begin with, right? You see how little sticking out the tip, how much of it I'm actually using now? And I'm just feeling that backbone as I go down. Just slowly wiggling and pushing. Caught up on something right there. Use my scissors. And there's the other fillet. When we lay these together in a pan, always put flesh to flesh, skin to skin. We don't want to cross-contaminate flesh and skin. But there we have the carcass, and we can go back and clean all that off and use that as usable. So now when we get to the actual fillet. Belly, really fatty, really nice, totally usable, but we're not going to portion it out into our final cuts. And then we have the rib cage that we want to cut out those bones out of. So again, using a nice skinny blade, going under those bones, freeing them out from the belly. Just trimming those out. Then we have up on the top, all this excess meat up here. We're going to clean that just by cutting around it and that excess fat. Trim down the rest of the belly. Now you could cure this, smoke this. It's great for smoking salmon bacon. So, you know, this is the really, really fatty, highest prize cut off of the actual salmon. Same with tuna. Tuna, you get the really fatty belly. It's going to protect the internal organs. So it has a lot of fat content. Not great for something that you're just putting on the grill and serving. If you don't serve this, a lot of chefs cut this off, will throw it away, not use it. If anything, season it up, put it on the grill, sear it, and eat it. Because it's delicious. Then we talk about skinning. Always have a trusty towel ready when you do the skinning. Do a little angle cut, and then it's all up to your opposite hand, not your knife hand. A lot of people make the mistake and cut back and forth with the knife. That's not what you're doing. You're cutting and pulling with the skin. So you see how my knife is at a little bit like 45-degree angle. That's creating a little bit of tension with the skin. And I'm just pulling back and wiggling the skin at this point. We had been talking, we're doing the duck chicharron, the duck skins. You do the same with the salmon. This is where you can go through, scrape it off with your board scraper, any excess meat, put it between two silpats, season it, oil, salt, pepper, some spices, and you can get nice crispy fish skins. So I'm not going to throw that away because it has been scaled. So if you guys would like, you're more than welcome to play around with that. Make sure you clean any extra scales off, because there are just a little bit up near the top. Alright. So you can see this is my weak side. I got a little janky right there. I'm just going to square this up so we get a nice cut. Again, all usable, going into a usable pile. And then we're going to go through and pin bone. So if you go from the head to the tail, you can feel where the pin bones are, and they're going to pop up like right here. Got a couple different options. Chef Snyder had the Japanese style, really nice and flat tweezers. Those work great, especially if you want to use it underhand. I like to get my hand underneath because it makes the bone pop out, and then you can feel the first bone. When you grab the bone, just slightly put your fingers around the bone and gently pull. It comes right on out. See how I'm pulling towards the head? Oop, missed one. Will you get me a quart container with some water in it? Now, my favorite type to use are these kind. And that's where you pinch between your thumb and kind of middle finger and index finger. And that's because it lays nice and flat. And I can just work my way up. And as I go, I'm just going bone to bone. any of the salmon, steelhead, family fish, trout, the bones come out really, really easy. And I meant to have it up here, but Seth's grabbing it. A quart container with some water is really helpful. Put it right up here. Because as these bones, you know, they're sticky, they get in here. Easiest way, rinse them off, boom, they come right off. Fatty fish, gets nice and slippery. Now as I get up towards the head, the meat does tend to get a little bit more tender. It's a lot less used, right? Up near the head it doesn't wiggle that much. There's not a lot of force put on that as the fish swims. So it tends to be a little bit softer and you can get tearing a little bit easier. One thing a lot of people always overlook is the bone right here, because you cut that bone. So don't forget to go back and feel for it. I think I just got it, but make sure that you're not missing one. That's an often overlooked cut or trimmed bone, and that'll be the one that the guest gets. And it's like, oh, there's bone in here. And you're like, no way, I went over 3 times. Always got one right up here. All right, so now I'm going to go back, just kind of clean this up a little bit more. To remove this little fat. You'll see a lot more in like fine dining that they're almost cutting it down to this edge. You can see a V in the grain, and they'll cut it to those V's just to get a nice even plank of salmon so you can do a nice square cut on it. We're not going to go that far today because we want to reserve as much as we can. What was the quantity on your guys' rec for that? Was it 6? 5
pounds for the steak.
How much? Well, we got 5 teams. So we're gonna go. It's always hard because you almost need to get 6, but that one's a little bigger. I'm gonna go like this. And one thing I want to show you guys too is when you get down towards the tail, you can always put what I call a hinge. So where it gets skinnier, put a little slice. I don't cut all the way through it. Take it, tuck it, fold it underneath. Then it kind of almost stays the same thickness all the way through. Some chefs like to do that, others don't, but it's a technique that's easily usable so that you can get a nice square piece and still utilize that skinnier tail cut.